Yeah, it sounds like you're protecting that bottom line a little bit too much there. So, uh, I have another question for another one of our listeners. Harry from Germany asked, "Why is big business and governments not doing more to pay higher wages uh, in third world countries specifically?"
Well, if I
Why
may.
don't we go to you, Kyle, first on this one?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just gonna jump in. I think it's because it's a consumer-driven industry, So it is hard. Valid people can make a small profit in like this year 2021 because we charge higher prices because they're sustainable, our products, And not only that, like 10% of all the proceeds that we generate go to partners like NGOs like A21 and the Freedom Lab who work against modern slavery today. So we try to find this battle into since it's hard for the governments, um, we try to take that fight on ourselves. So we try to fight that battle in two spheres. So we don't finance big, manufacturers like Addy has, and we also finance the NGOs that fight against modern slavery and people in poor conditions, in this corrupt system. So yeah, I mean, we make a shirt for $40 and we sell them for 80. 10 years ago, the public weren't they were not gonna buy this. But things are different today. They have information, they know what, this system is doing to other people, and they want to be a part of the change as well. Um, what are your thoughts on that, Eddie?
Yeah, it's very interesting because you know we're very different. We're obviously in a developing countries, and our our main uh, buyer is the big companies like Kmart, and our, we make products very cheap. We sell them very cheap, and we simply can't afford to be having all these human rights and safety things, and because if we added all those up, it's going to add another 20% onto our cost. Kmart will go to one of 100 other factories in India or Thailand. We got to look up, it's easy for this caller messenger, to message in and say, the we're doing such a bad thing. But if we didn't do it, someone else would do it. Our costs are a certain very low. That caller who rings in from his comfortable first world life, would he be willing to pay an extra 20% on all his costs, on his bills, even on his taxes to pay government workers, so that for a livable pay wage? Then you have the issue of inflation. You pay more money, staff, it just goes in inflation. So I just think, it's easy to be idealistic in a developed first world country. But the reality is, these callers are calling in complaining about big business, complaining about governments. Are they actually willing to pay 10, 20% more and have a reduction in their standard of living? I don't think so. I think, being, with all due respect, hypocritical.
Well, I do agree with that. Some people are still not willing to pay for it, and they might even be hypocritical. But I mean, just because that thought is in their minds, it's indicator of change, And they might not be okay to pay for something today, and it's okay. That's a process, The system that we are a part of today, you, Edward, me, Matt, didn't happen in 5 years. It didn't happen in 10 years. It took decades to develop. And we got to understand this is a long battle. Yeah, you said, well, if I don't do it, someone else is got to do it. That kind of thinking don't lead to any change. It doesn't lead to any change. Um, so we as a society got to start to think bigger and broader and start to change in these levels. So yeah, I see that it's a long battle. I see that people will end up seeing the goodness of it, and they will start redirecting their purchase power from these big manufacturers towards more ethically sustainable, brands. Yeah, so I believe that's a movement that's going to happen.
Some interesting perspectives. So the last question is about the environment. It's from Greta Zumberg from Sweden. She asks, what are you doing to prevent global warming? Big business greed is destroying the planet for future generations.
Well, I want to say, first of all, big thank you for Greta. She's amazing. Greta Thunberg, she's been, fighting this battle. And awesome that she's here listening to us. So, yeah, I mean, Valor people is using, like, we only use organic cotton. So, what does that mean? Organic cotton is way less pollutant. Like, the fashion industry is one of the most polluted in the world. We use a lot of resources, water, chemicals that go in the rivers and everything. And what we try to do is like reduce that damage that we do. We don't only care about people, but we care about the earth as well. The earth is where we live. We only got one. And I believe that is our duty to, sustain it and keep it well. So yeah, we do that. And we also, plant trees. We have a plant tree campaign, to cancel our carbon footprint by donating 3% of our proceeds to new plants. So that's what we try to do to, help.
Awesome. So what about you, Edward?
Well, pretty much the opposite of everything Caio said.
So what makes you say that?
Well, in India and Thailand, developing countries, people there, understandably and quite rightly, want the same standard of living as Greta from Sweden. But I want to ask Greta, that standard of living she has, hospitals, healthcare, the trains, the buildings, the water systems, all of that was built at a cost to the environment. And what damage has the West already done to the world? Could this world be in such a state already because of the developed countries? How for hundreds of years, like the Industrial Revolution, all the carbon they've been pumping out, and then all of a sudden they're taking the moral high ground to countries like India and Thailand, who only want the same as what Greta's got in Sweden. If we start doing all those fancy things like organic cotton, and we're going to have to raise our costs. We raise our costs, Kmart goes somewhere else. Our factory, no support from the government. People literally starve to death. Sounds drastic, but that's the reality, unfortunately. We need low costs, high profits, more jobs.
Wow. So any final, I'm going to give you the last thought here. Any final thoughts, Caio?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. We do need to understand that other countries want to develop as much as they can, but we now have information that we didn't have before. In the Industrial Revolution, two wrongs don't make one right. Just because they made a mistake doesn't mean that we can make a mistake. I believe that we can develop in a more sustainable way. Seeking to do what is the best for everyone. I mean, I believe you got to ask yourself this question: what is the most loving thing that I can do? And so my answer to that is yes. Please buy ethically, sustainable products where possible. So there's a website, ethicalshoppings.com. That it tells you companies that pay a livable way, and which you can find ethically sustainable products there. So yeah, I would suggest that.
That's great. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us, Edward, Caio. It was great to hear from you both, and we'll see you guys next time on the Today podcast.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you, guys.